And as I said in my review on Twitter, my very quick one, that's not an over exaggeration at all. So welcome, everyone, to Rings of Power is an absolute disaster and a total perversion of Tolkien. As a matter of fact, if we just remove all the rules, if we just forget.
So there have been a lot of strong reactions to this show, but the truth is it's not as good or bad as most people are saying. It is a fine show, but it does suffer from a few problems. The biggest of which I think is the success of Marvel. See, I think when Amazon went into development of this project, they took a look at successful properties out there already, and they see Marvel. They've earned something like $26 billion. And Amazon said, what lessons can we learn from Marvel's success to help improve our own success? And when you look at the tools Marvel used, it's all about spectacle. The writing doesn't necessarily have to be all that strong, but the amazing visuals are such a spectacle that you almost forget about the bad writing until much later when you kind of deconstruct the art a little bit. And watching this show, I actually drew a lot of parallels with Marvel. For example, the Rings of Power introduces way too many characters in a really short window of time. Marvel Eternals had the same problem. Too many characters, too short amount of time without any meaningful development or dialogue with them. And the dialogue I do get kind of goes on a little bit too long. And because of things like that, the first episode feels really slow. So it has a bit of a pacing issue. Now the second episode moves along much quicker and it's a little better paced, and I enjoyed the episode more. I talked to a friend of mine though, and he said that they don't really follow Tolkien's books very closely and it bothers him. So I'm getting the feeling from him that people who really like Tolkien work, the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings series, are not gonna like this show very much. The characters are a little bit too far off of what he wrote. It seems like people who are into the books do not like that very much. But yeah, it does feel like they modeled this after the Marvel theory of how to make properties, and it is smart to do. They have made lots of money. We'll see if it works for them here. Now there is actually a character I did really like, and her name is Galadriel. Okay, so Galadriel is the main character in this show, or the main focus of this show. And I do like her motivations here. She loses her brother, decides to take up his mission and also avenge him for being killed. And I do like a good revenge story. So she goes off and she goes through all these, let's call them adventures and investigation and hunting for the person who killed him. And all of that I enjoy. But I can see that there are going to be people who do not like this character at all. For example, there is an ice troll scene where her unit of elves are getting their butts kicked pretty bad. But then she shows up and handles it pretty easy, just takes him down like it's nothing, dusts her hands off, how you doing, keep it moving. But that's gonna bother a lot of people that she's too overpowered, and you're gonna start hearing the Mary Sue thing come up again or whatever. And I think the biggest problem is that Amazon is latching on to this idea of what people have been trying to force down our throats as strong women in movies and television, where you have a female character but you take away everything feminine about that character other than her body, and you give her all classically male character traits like really stoic, hesitant to be vulnerable enough to ever be in love, kind of mean, like all these things, right? And basically just put a wig on a man, call that your female lead. And ironically enough, not only do we not see that as like a strong female character, it actually has the opposite effect, which I think is kind of funny, where we think that it's actually an incredibly weak, insecure character, because I think most of us realize at this point that real strength comes from vulnerability and how you handle yourself when you're terrified and you're scared you're gonna lose this fight or whatever, and you have to fight anyway. There's even this scene where Galadriel needs to tip her head to the king so he could put this crown on her head, but she is resistant to that, and that's meant for us to believe that she's just so strong she tips her head to no one. And I think that Hollywood needs to come to the realization that toxic masculinity, even when used in a female character, is not recognized as strength. I don't mind her character being the way she is. I like that she's a good fighter, and I kind of like her stoicness. However, there is a scene that did make me raise my brows a bit, where she's on a boat supposed to be going somewhere, doesn't want to go, and they're in the middle of the ocean. She just jumps off the boat and starts swimming, and it's like, I don't know, man, 100 miles is hard to say. There's no like land in sight. You're not just gonna swim the open ocean like that. That is insane. No food, no water, and you're just gonna swim for like 3-4 days on end, and like, what's your plan here? Anyway, so that was the only scene of hers that really bothered me. The rest I can live with, and I want to see where it goes from here for Galadriel. Now, there are 2 more characters I really enjoyed in this show, Elrond and Durin.
Make yourself comfortable, please.
But not too comfortable.
So between Elrond and Durin, there is this scene in the second episode, which really made the second episode work for me because they're old friends, they come together, it's really funny, it's heartwarming, it's also relatable in a way because, and maybe it's just me, but basically Elrond hasn't come to visit Durin in 20 years. And he's missed everything about Durin's life that's important. And that really affected me because I have neglected friends as well because my career, my own family, my own hobbies, and it just kind of all of a sudden time passes and you're like, oh my God, you go to visit your friend, they're like, where have you been? I've had kids, I got married. The hell is wrong with you? Like, oh, I'm sorry, I had work. And that's just not a good excuse to your friends. So this scene actually touched me in a way that I didn't expect. It kind of hit me in the kidneys a little bit. I was not prepared for that. And it made me actually want to call some friends that I haven't talked to in a while. So overall, I think the show is fine. Yes, the first episode has pacing problems. It's really slow. I don't enjoy the dialogue, but episode 2 was much better, and I heard they're planning on doing 50 episodes, and I think they're just trying to set up too many things to pay off down the road, when really you just need to get me invested now. Because if you don't get me invested now, there won't be a down the road for you. I will not watch this show if it continues to be slow and boring, but I think there's hope. Episode 2 picked up in pace. I think it's going to pick up in pace, and interesting things are going to happen as we get further down the road. So for me, overall, I give this a rating of something around 6.5 to 7 out of 10. It's definitely not House of the Dragon, but that doesn't mean it can't get there. One last thing before we go to, I'm kind of adding this here at the end, just thinking about this show. There's a whole part of the show with this like Gandalf type of character. I do not want this to be Gandalf. If this is just them kind of telling us why Gandalf loves hobbits because these little hobbit girls found him and they took care of him and they fed him and all this, I'm not on board with that. I would like it much more if this old man turns out to be a bad guy, because at least that I'm not quite expecting as much. I think it would be a nice surprise. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, hit the like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.